morning, everyone. My name is Michał, and I came to you with not a simple question as it might sound. Is UX still a creative field? Now, we do have only 20 minutes. Thank you. It's even better now. Right, so it's not an easy question, definitely not easy to start the day with, so I appreciate you all being here. But I also assume that if you are here, you've asked yourself this question at least once. And if not exactly this one, probably maybe something similar, because it's one of those questions that pops up every now and then as that of UX as we know it, meta trend, right? But we do have reasons to have doubts. The fact is, UX is constantly evolving and redefining itself with different new processes, different new tools, setups. It is constantly changing. And with new ideas being present, some of them are obsolete. And that's okay. For us, that's an opportunity to reflect and maybe regroup. So let me reframe that question a bit. Is there a place for creativity in the UX process? I guess that intuitively you know there at least should be, right? Or it was not that long time ago. But what we observe today is UX being locked in the constraints of project management frameworks, optimized for predictability and immediate output. Now, as organizations being more advanced and UX more mature, the roles and specializations of UXers became more narrow, and goals became more focused on strategic and tactical tasks. Of course, it would be unrealistic to expect one person to cover all of that complexity. But this, alongside with project verticals, product segments, or whatever product structure you apply to this, drives us further away from the bigger picture. You probably remember that not that long time ago, UX was introduced as something to help companies become more design-driven and more user-centric, to create products that people actually need and want. But along the way, all those companies strongly influenced the design process to make it more rigid, predictable, easier to manage, and easier to fit in the corporate process. It's, I assume, nothing new for you, but once put on the slide, it becomes very painful to see. So that development process strongly influenced the design process. I recently read a piece by Michał Malevich who said, and I feel the same way, that design is no longer a mixture of art and craft. We are in a systemized, templatized, boring post-design era. Well, the one part I'm not exactly sure about is, does it exactly has to be boring? But the fact is, we focus our efforts on operational level, on short-term goals. But we still are creative. Even though we are focused on that immediate output together with development teams, put together with developers into sprints, focusing on what should happen in upcoming week or two. We are creative after all. But this is an incremental type of creativity. And the problem with incremental is that it focuses on small fixes and improvements. It doesn't move the needle the way we would expect it to. So what can we do to take it a step or two forward? To focus on the vision, to make big, bold bets again, to make it more exciting? Well, with all previously said, is there a place here for radical creativity? Right, let me try to unpack this. Some time ago, I came across the book Speculative Everything. At first, I thought it was too abstract to be any of value for my work. But one statement in particular kept me awake at night. I must admit, I was most people according to that statement. I believed that UX is about problem solving. But is it? In the late 60s, Walter Pickler asked himself how technology will change people's interactions. And long before anyone thought about virtual reality, he decided to explore a future where people were fully embedded into information, into media, into endless web, and closed against the outside world. Now, he wasn't solving any specific problem. Instead, he was in search for problems that didn't exist yet. And we may argue that it's not exactly UX, but it is about the user, and it is about experience. And it opened a lot of questions about the future of interaction interfaces. We've learned that those were all valid questions, and they helped define something that might become new reality. And this new reality will inevitably change the society and create new challenges for us as designers. This is the kind of design that goes further than fixing problems. And so should we. Now, I realize that at this point it might sound a bit radical and unrealistic, but bear with me. About 10 years ago, Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby came up with a kind of manifesto, confronting the design they were doing right now with the one they would like to do. This became a foundation for speculative design. Their list is much longer, but I wanted to focus your attention on these 5 points that help us to move from problem solving to problem finding. It's important to know that we don't want to replace A list with B. We want to enrich it. We want to refocus. We want to do a bit more. And with that approach, this might be applied not only to a futuristic type of thinking. We can take it down to the level of products and features. Because the goal of speculative design is not just to come up with wild ideas, but to use those ideas to inspire innovation in the present, to push the boundaries of what is currently possible. Now, speaking of possible, when we dive deeper into speculative design, it gives us some interesting tools and methods to help structurize our thinking. When we start thinking, when we start ideating possible futures, we need to make sure that we won't go too far. And to decide what too far means, we can use the Stewart-Candice diagram that shows different possible futures and future thinking. When people plan for the future, they consider a distant future, which could be 30 years from now, or immediate one, that could be later today or tomorrow. With further psychological distance, that can lead to more abstract thinking. And the nearer one will result in more specific type of thinking. So to make this useful for us, we should aim for a medium-term future, which would be something like 5 to 10 years from now. That is distant enough to become abstract, but still grounded in today's reality. Knowing that, knowing where to put the starting point, we can start building our scenarios and work backwards to situations and solutions, asking ourselves on the way, what needs to be true to make it happen? And as you can see, that's a backcasting type of work. And it shows that we can't, or at least shouldn't, just come up with stuff and hope for the best future to happen. We should start with thinking what future we want and then ask ourselves how to make it happen. But I started with the problems in our organizations, right? So does anyone in the org wants to hear about it? Can I convince anyone with that type of thinking? I can bet that it will be difficult, and there's a great chance you will face resistance. But here's the trick, and I actually really like this point, because it's super obvious once it's said. Now, although this concept was initially created for political sciences, it's perfectly applicable for us. Joseph Overton, that's from concept from 90s or something like that. So it's pretty old to become valid and not old enough to become, old. So Joseph Overton showed that the viability of any idea is determined by whether it falls into the window between extremes. What does it mean for us? It means that by introducing new radical concepts, more radical than the boundaries, we can expand those boundaries of acceptance window, right? We can make it a bit bigger. With that, we can push yesterday's radical to today's acceptable. And I believe you all know, you all feel that, well, you know that. You've tested that many times during your lifetime. It's so obvious. But actually, that makes it super easy to use. And it actually works. So, how should the radical creativity look for us in today's UX? Now, I don't have any particular framework on a process for you, but I do have 3 tips that you can start using today. So, to push those boundaries, to make that Overton window a bit bigger, to start with introducing new concepts, and even to introduce new concepts just to make that window a bit bigger, to be able to introduce something maybe less radical, but something that will move the needle. Challenge assumptions. Again, super easy. That should be embedded into UX's mind. But think beyond products and systems. Challenge all the assumptions you can meet. And that mindset is really important because we want to design things that no one is asking for. And that is super difficult because we are hardwired to imagine only incremental improvements. That's why we feel so good about incremental creativity, because it's much easier. It's grounded into things we already know. But we can have kind of an anchor there in the word. Those are the signals of change we can use. There are different types of signals out there, and different types may apply to your products or concepts. You can look for those actually everywhere. Use your experience, use your imagination, use your passion. Look for those. Go beyond your product, go beyond your company. Search for those signals. But again, it doesn't mean that we want to follow every single novelty. It's not about chasing. It's not about constantly changing the product. Those signals are there to help you to define a new vision and think about the possible futures. And how to get there, it's your job to think about. Last but not least, explore implications. Ask bold and inconvenient questions. That's super important, because that is the thing that actually moves us forward. And I know that it sounds like a cliche, but actually, the U in UX stands for users. And we need to ask not only what if, but also what is. Right. I know that we went far from the initial question, so let me conclude. Is UX still a creative field? Well, not as much as it should be. But we can change that. We know how. We have all the tools. We have all the possibilities there. And our creativity allows us to explore the future of our today's decisions. Right, so today you're going to hear a lot of interesting talks and meet a lot of interesting, bright, smart people. I guess it's a great opportunity to start thinking about it, to start thinking about what future we want to design for and how we can use our creativity, how to make room for our creativity. So I hope you enjoyed this conference, and thank you.